Salutations, respected viewers. I am George from Ireland, and here I am in Chiswick, London, or Chiswick Lane. And behind me is the house where Alexander Pope lived for 3 years. So Pope was born in London in 1688, and in those days Chiswick was a village in Middlesex, so that was well outside London. And he was born in the year of the so-called Glorious Revolution, when James II, the Catholic king, fled and was deemed by Parliament to have abdicated, and then his Protestant nephew and son-in-law, William of Orange, took over. William of Orange being related to James II in both ways. Yes, William of Orange married his first cousin, Mary. So William and Mary became joint sovereigns. As the American college, William and Mary, is named in honor of these two, the oldest college in the United States. Anyhow, so the new Parliament elected under William III, as it became, introduced anti-Catholic discrimination, or reintroduced, I should say, whereas this legislation had been relaxed under James II, the Act of Toleration, the Act of Indulgence. So one of the stipulations of the new law was that Catholics were not permitted to reside within 10 miles of London. Now Chiswick, I have a feeling we were just inside that, but he got away with it, sometimes laxly enforced. And Catholics weren't allowed to do all sorts of things. Legal disabilities were imposed on us here and in Ireland and Scotland. Obviously Wales, being a principality, well, followed England. England, Wales had a single parliament at the time. Anyway, so Pope was largely educated at home by preceptors, but showed that he was a poetic prodigy. So composing verses from his earliest childhood of exceptional merit. And this came to the attention of the local aristocracy. And it was not just the grandees, but it reached the ears of the king himself. By the time Pope grew up, it was George II who set aside sectarian prejudice and granted audiences to Pope, was very fond of him. So George II had come over from Hanover as a young man. His father obviously was a middle-aged man, George I, when he came over. So there wasn't perhaps such strong anti-Catholic sentiment in Hanover, being an overwhelmingly Protestant country in northern Germany, surrounded by other Protestant states. Whereas in England it was close to France, which is a Catholic superpower, and obviously Ireland, and most of us were Catholics. So the Hanoverians perhaps didn't feel quite so under threat. Anyway, Pope, he visited the house at Kew, the King's house at Kew, not very far away, just over the River Thames, and he composed this ditty for the King's doggy. Ooh, I'll show you a doggy in the background, how apposite, saying, "I am His Majesty's dog at Kew, pray sir, whose dog are you?" and things like that. So he wasn't very politically engaged, or as he wrote for himself, "Reformers of government, fools contend, whatever is governed best is best." I probably misquoted it a bit. He had friends of both Whigs and Tories. He's mostly a friend of Horace Walpole, the son of the first Prime Minister, Sir Robert Walpole. So what else about him? He didn't concern himself with questions of what are we going to put the poor, or is the slave trade immoral, because it was almost universally accepted in this country. It was uncontroversial, this abominable cruelty. So he never wed. He suffered from Pott's disease, so he was very short, severe curvature of the spine. He was like 1 meter 30 centimeters tall, and he had some sort of friendship with Lady Wortley Montagu. Was it romantic? Was it platonic? People are not sure about that one. So there was some tiff when a young man cut the hair off, or just a lock of hair of a sleeping woman. He put these people out of the top drawer, and he then satirized it. He was into bathos, Pope, the rape of the lock. Now, rape was a respected theme of classical literature, like the rape of the Sabines, the rape of Lucretia, and others. So he penned that poem about how over something trifling people could get very, very het up. I've just read this. So he wrote a poem about being in Windsor Forest, because when they had to leave London in its infancy, they moved to Binfield, which is on the edge of Windsor Forest. It was outside the exclusion zone, and that's where he grew up, in East Berkshire. His father had made a fortune in the linen trade, so one of the reasons that Alexander Pope could devote so much time to perfecting the art of poesy is he never had to work a day in all his life. Later on he moved to Twickenham, which is again, let me see, is this side of the river. It would seem to south of the river, but it's not. It was the way the river meanders. The River Thames more or less does an S shape around here. And we're on the north bank, and actually so is Twickenham, even though Twickenham is further south of Richmond, and Richmond's on the south side. If that's confusing, well, it is. So he couldn't go to university because in order to go to university, and very few people did, perhaps 1% of the populace, one had to subscribe to the 39 Articles of the Church of England, this document saying what the Church of England is, and specifically abjuring papal authority. Now, Pope, how do they have that surname? Surnames had only become hereditary in the 14th century. They're often whoever's son, or just some sort of individual description. But they changed, and so I'm guessing in the 16th century, and the family can't be traced that far back, because they were recusants, as they refused to recant the Catholic faith, they had the surname Pope. But I could be wrong about that, putting two and together, possibly making 5. But anyway, he knew that little learning was a dangerous thing, so perhaps that's why he thought it was good. He didn't go to university abroad, could have gone to a Catholic one overseas. Oh, there's some chows here. What else about Pope and his many famous poems? He wrote his essay on man, presume not God to scan, the proper study of man is man. He reworked one of St. Paul's epistles, saying about dying Christian to his soul, grave, where is thy victory? Death, where is thy sting? So he composed poetry of various different kinds, but often there were pastoral poems celebrating the splendor of nature. So he helped to found the Augustan age in English literature, as in looking back to ancient Rome, the age of Augustus, as in the first emperor, the end of the 1st century BC, the beginning of the 1st century AD, was supposed to be a flourishing of literature and rejecting decadence. So Twickenham became something of an artistic colony there on the bank of the Thames. He was a very close friend of Dr. Jonathan Swift, or Dean Swift, who was an Irish poet. Now, Swift was born in Dublin to English parents, to be regarded as Irish or English, both. They'd been to Trinity College Dublin, and this was just after the age of Dryden, the first poet laureate, as in the official poet of England, first of all, was the poet laureate. Then when the United Kingdom was founded in 1707, the poet laureate was for the whole of the United Kingdom. So Dryden had just died in 1700 when Pope was a child. Now his second cousin once removed was Jonathan Swift. I'm not sure they ever met though, actually. So many people were following footsteps of Dryden, but Pope tried to move things on. He didn't write any dramas, so far as I'm aware, Pope, because that was obviously the most popular form of entertainment, and often they'd write them in meter and in verse. But I don't think he did not really engage with the theatre a great deal. So Dean Swift visited him a great deal. Jonathan Swift, his title was Dean, as he was Dean of St. Patrick's Cathedral in Dublin. So it was a Church of Ireland clergyman, as in that's a carbon copy of the Church of England. So he had a generous salary, a good manse to reside in, very few parishioners, so he had plenty of free time. It was the only job to have. And Dean of the Cathedral, he's not bishop, he's some sort of administrative job in the cathedral. I don't quite get it. So he's sometimes known by his job title, Dean, rather than his name, Jonathan. Right, is there anything else I would like to say about Pope? Well, he died in 1744. He's interred in an Anglican church, despite being a Roman Catholic. There's a plain P on the door. So he's the second most quoted person in the English language after William Shakespeare. Well, I can't think of any more quotations at the moment which pop into my head just this very moment. Okay, so that's enough about Pope. Right, so please follow me on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. Thank you for donations on PayPal, georgecallahan79@gmail.com, and make sure you subscribe. So book online lessons with me in English, in history, in English as a foreign language, politics, religious studies, geography, law, French. Especially with coronavirus, don't go to school or university, online lessons with me. And let me help you with your dissertation, theses. I edit things. I also translate from French, Spanish, Italian, Romanian, Russian, and German. And choose me as your tour guide in London. There's a way to message me on this. There's the Great West Road. They're going that way out of London, or this way into London. So that's why it might be a bit noisy, but hopefully my microphone thing has worked. You know, where is it on my lapel? Maybe you can see it there on my lapel. All right, toodaloo.